Oh, you got your own one.
I'm good.
All right, thank you. You can just leave it there in case anybody opens it. All right, we're to proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Steve, we call James Evans.
Do you solemnly swear affirm that the testimony you shall give in this cause to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I certainly do. So heard.
You're James Evans.
Yes, sir. James Keaton.
You know, I think it's ironic that we lost a lawyer by the name of James Evans this past week.
I'm sorry.
Tragic accident. Go ahead, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, could you please state your entire name and spell your last name for the court reporter?
My name is James Keaton Evans. The spelling of my last name is E-V-A-N-S.
Sir, where are you currently employed?
The Homicide Division with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
Are you currently a detective in that division?
Yes,
And how long have you been in that division?
for about 14 years now, I think.
How long with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office total?
My official date of hire was November 27 of the year 2000.
Any prior law enforcement or military experience?
No,
Fair to say you've been to and passed the academy many years ago?
many moons ago, yes.
And have you received supplemental training and specialized training as a law enforcement officer over the past 20 years?
Yes, our agency is very dedicated to advancing our skill and overall educational level in regards to law enforcement, in regards to forensics, technology. So we have ongoing continuous education.
And I'm going to talk a bit more later about your training in phone forensics once we get there.
Okay.
Were you assigned to the same division back in 2019?
Yes, I was.
At some point in 2019, did you become involved in the investigation of the murder of Rachel Bay?
Yes, I was asked by Detective Drake to assist him with the investigation.
Let's talk about some of the areas of the investigation you were involved in. Did you research the background for Mr. Robert Hayes?
Yes, I did a very extensive background.
And what did your investigation reveal when you looked into Mr. Hayes' background?
I learned that Mr. Hayes was born and raised in Palm Beach County, Florida. He still had family in Palm Beach County, Florida. I learned Mr. Hayes at one point lived in Daytona Beach, Florida, lived in North Carolina, lived in Atlanta, Georgia, I believe. I learned back in 2016 that he drove, I believe it was a silver in color Honda Pilot. I had reviewed a number of citations that he had received.
Let's talk about those citations that he received. You said they were in 2016.
2016.
And did Mr. Hayes in those citations, was a phone number provided by Mr. Hayes or appeared to be provided by Mr. Hayes in those citations or contacts with law enforcement?
It wasn't in the citations. It was in regards to contacts that he had with law enforcement. I believe back in twice in 2015 and in 2016, Mr. Hayes has been the complainant. And during those encounters and interactions with law enforcement, he provided them with the same mobile device number.
And do you recall that mobile device number?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
It was an AT&T wireless mobile device number, and it was 561-568-6912.
6912.
561-568-6912 is the number you said?
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct.
Now, did you research where Mr. Hayes was living back in 2016, March of 2016, around the time of Rachel Bay's murder?
Yes.
And where was he living at that time? What address?
He was living in Riviera Beach, Florida, more specifically at 1272 West 30th Street in Riviera Beach, Florida.
Now, also in regard to this case, did you prepare, we're just going to touch on it briefly, a search warrant for Mr. Hayes' apartment after he was arrested?
Yes, that was one of the few search warrants that I authored.
And was that a different address than the address he was living at in 2016?
Yes, the address in regards to the search warrant, I believe, was 5500 North Flagler Avenue, in West Palm Beach, Florida. And the address he was living at in 2016 was 1272 West 30th Street. So we're looking at a distance of about anywhere from 3 to 4 miles that separates the two respective residences.
As part of your investigation, did you prepare and execute a search warrant for call detail records related to that number 691, ending in 6912?
Yes, I did.
And what did you request in this search warrant? Was it just call detail records?
No, what I specifically requested was call detail records. In cellular world, we refer to them more as historical cell site location information or call data. His specific carrier was AT&T Wireless. So I've dealt with them for the last 12, 13 years. So I know that they are able to provide me with cellular data for call detail records in this form of voice calls, SMS messages, and data associated services. So I requested all of those records along with the definitions page to explain what I'm getting, subscriber data.
And do you have any specialized training in reviewing and understanding and mapping these records that you get from AT&T or other providers?
Yes, I've been involved with geolocation analysis since back in 2007. Back then, originally, we utilized a Microsoft Street and Trips program, and a lot of the stuff we had to do manually by hand. As the years have advanced and moved on, our agency purchased a product that we utilize now for analytical and mapping software. I probably have in excess of 300 hours in training from various programs as it relates to cellular data and geolocation analysis. I've probably mapped over 300 cell phones over the years or analyzed data related to in excess of 300 cell phones. That's data that I receive from the carrier and the specific mobile devices themselves.
And have you testified in court about it in the past as well?
I've probably testified between 10 and 15 times over the years in various hearings in Palm Beach County, Florida, in state and federal court.
And you mentioned a mapping or data analysis program that your agency has. What program is that?
Our agency currently uses a program called Trax that's created by the company ZX. And essentially what it is, it's analytical and mapping software. Because with the advancements in technology and how dynamic things are, it's imperative for us to have something that has an algorithm that has more of a scientific foundation or methodology behind it. So that's why we moved into that realm and we utilize that specific product now.
And does that make it easier for you to analyze and review some of the data you get back from these carriers because it's so substantial sometimes?
I mean, you have to have an understanding of the radio frequency environment and the infrastructure. You have to know what you're looking at. What it allows us to do is process large data sets. And it's a lot easier to follow and read. However, you have to have an understanding of the actual raw data that you get back from the company. I can have analytical and mapping software and just toss something in there. That doesn't mean I know what I'm looking at. You have to have an understanding of that world, so to speak, in order to be able to accurately interpret what it is that the program actually creates.
And you've been trained in using the program by ZX.
Yes, like I said, I started doing this years ago when we had to do everything manually. So we had to know and understand it. Like I said, what the program really allows us to do is be a little more, it allows us, if I have 10,000 calls I need to map, I'm a lot more efficient now in doing that because I have a program. But again, in order to be able to intelligently and accurately speak to the data, speak to the environment and speak to what you're seeing, you have to have a foundation in that technology.
And since 2016, or 2019, when you first executed the search warrant to get that call detail information, are you also able to map now more specific information if given by the provider, like time on tower information?
Correct. Back in 2019, when you're dealing with cellular technology, say I make a phone call and it's a 30-minute phone call, I'm talking to my mother. For the duration of that call, especially if I'm moving around or advancing through the cellular market, that specific call is going to be handed off from one cell site to another. They call that a call handoff. Originally, AT&T didn't provide us with specific timestamp information for those handoffs. Beginning in June of 2021, they advertised to us that they were doing that. And because they archive records for anywhere between 7 and 10 years, I was able to author a fresh search warrant and retrieve that information.
And did you also use that information to do another analysis of the movement of that cell phone on the day of Rachel Bates' murder?
Yes,
Now, in your first search warrant for the 6912 number, did you also get subscriber information?
yes.
And who was the subscriber noted in the subscriber information for that phone?
Robert Hayes.
And did you provide to the state attorney's office or to me recently a map you created with the ZX program that detailed the mapping of the movement for time on tower data for that phone number 6912 on the evening and early morning hours of Rachel Bates' murder?
Yeah, beginning March 6th of 2016 until the morning of March 7th of 2016.
You know, at this time, I request just for a demonstrative aid to show this video to the court. It's about 7 minutes, and if Detective Evans can just narrate for the court as the video is played about what we're looking at.
Okay.
Detective Evans, there is a laser pointer there if you need it.
And like I said, counsel, feel free to take the jury box if it's a little more comfortable, so you don't get a crick in your neck.
Might just move over to the other side.
Sure.
And Judge, when Detective Evans step down, if he wants to, he might be able to see more clearly on my
Sure.
screen.
Why don't you get closer to the laptop?
Thank you. So when this starts, what you're going to see is this illustration is actually created through Google Earth. So this is just a Google Earth map that you're going to see. I'm just pause it for a second. It's kind of difficult to see here, but right there in the middle, there's going to be what I would call like a little lollipop shape. And what that's going to represent is the actual cellular site. We refer to it as a cellular site, and cellular technology is going to be comprised of, in cellular technology, the radio frequency infrastructure or environment is going to be comprised of a cellular network. Cellular network is a network that's made up of base stations or cell sites that are deployed throughout a geographical area to provide network coverage to that area. At the cell site level, you're going to find all the radio network equipment. What I mean by that is your omnidirectional or directional antennas that transmit and receive the radio frequency signals, all your adjunct equipment like your backup generators, your coaxial cables, or your radio frequency amplifiers, and the actual radios themselves. Those specific radios, they process and handle local radio communications with your mobile device, but they also utilize their allocated power to generate electromagnetic radiations. Through the coaxial cables that are attached to that site, those radiations travel up to the antenna, and that radiation is propagated within a specific geographical area, creating what we know as cellular coverage. The overlays that you see here represent what we refer to as the estimated propagation field, or more specifically, the estimated handoff coverage area. Essentially what I'm saying, if there's a transmission between a mobile device and a cell site, you would expect that mobile device to be operating within the geographical area of that coverage overlay. This specific pop-ups that you see with each transmission, we don't get any geolocation data unless there's an actual transmission, some type of communication between the mobile device itself and the cellular site. Let's say, for instance, my phone, I have a cell phone, it's powered on, it's connected to the network, but there's no type of transmission, no voice, no data, no SMS messages for an hour and a half. Nobody calls me, I don't communicate with anybody, there's no activity otherwise. No location data is going to be engendered because there's no actual communication with the cell site, with that network. So we don't get any type of mappable data from the wireless carriers unless there's some type of interaction or communication between the phone itself and the cellular site, which highlights network activity. This specific yellow overlay here is the location where Mr. Hayes lived at the time. 1272 West 30th Street. I'm sorry, this place mark here. And what essentially this is showing is that at the time of this transmission, which is about 10 o'clock p.m. on March 6, 2016, the mobile device associated with Mr. Hayes is facilitating transmissions to cell site and sectors that have an estimated handoff coverage area that encompasses where he lives. This evidence is consistent with the mobile device being at his residence or within that geographical area. This next transmission is at 10:03 p.m., March 6, 2016. This upcoming transmission, the first interaction is at 10:15 p.m. The second was at 10:15 p.m. and 28 seconds. And the third was at 10:15 p.m. and 57 seconds. Now I'm going to pause it for a sec here. Now, what you just saw from the initial beginning of this illustration to now, you can now see the mobile device itself has started to descend or travel south. It's no longer operating within the same geographical area when the initial transmission started at 10 o'clock p.m. As you can see, the phone has moved a considerable distance south, and you'll continue to see movement as the time progresses. This is now we're at 10:33 p.m. and 21 seconds. So we're talking about 15 minutes from the last transaction. It's continuing to travel somewhere south. Now we're at 10:34 p.m. and 30 seconds. And right here, what you see here, you have here, you have here. This area that I have highlighted is what's referred to as overlapping coverage. In cellular technology, the driving forces are going to be overlapping coverage, which is basically saying all adjacent or neighboring cell sites, they're engineered to overlap with each other. If I'm traveling through the cellular network, it's imperative for me to be able to maintain that connection. Wireless carriers are aware of this because they make money selling network access to their customers. If I'm driving through the market and I continue to drop calls, they're going to lose money. Verizon knows that, hey, AT&T is going to get all of my customers. So I got to design my infrastructure to ensure that it provides the most efficient and effective coverage. So that's what you see overlapping coverage there. Another important dynamic is what's called call handoff. I'm driving through the system. Let's say I start at I-95 and wherever, and I'm traveling south into Miami, and I have an hour phone call with my mother. I have a 3-hour phone call with my mother. As I'm traveling south on Interstate 95, that call is going to continuously be handed off from one cell site to another cell site. And that's what you see here when you see that overlapping coverage. You see overlapping coverage here, but you also see a cell site here and a cell site here, and you see a transmission being handed off.
Detective, what are those other markers? So you have Hayes residence up there, but I see 2 other markers. Why are those marked and what are them?
This is the Ramada Inn right here. In this specific location here is where Rachel Bay frequented. This is the area where she was last known to be the night of March 6, 2016 into March 7th of 2016. And this is the location of the Ramada Inn where the investigation concluded Mr. Hayes worked at the time. Right now, we're at 10:44 p.m. 45 seconds. We're at 10:47 p.m. 31 seconds. Still at 10:47 p.m. 52 seconds. And as you can see, for roughly the last 15 to 20 minutes or so, the mobile device is still operating within the same geographical area. If any transmission or call or you would expect to find the mobile device somewhere within that overlay. As you can see, that call has been handed off to a different cell site. Now it's being handed off to a different cell site here. And see, this is an important dynamic that you just saw. Let me just back up for a second here. In cellular technology, geographical areas are divided into what they call cells. What is a cell? A cell is basically a physical or geographical area where a particular set of frequency serves its users, us, the customers, or the wireless providers. However, it's imperative to understand that you can have multiple cell sites that provide coverage to the same geographical area. However, those respective cell sites are going to utilize different frequencies to avoid any type of radio, channel, or frequency transmission interference. So as you see, the phone is still operating within the same geographical area, but within this time frame, you'll see it went from a cell site. You see 3 different cell sites were assessed. And if you look at all those cell sites, you're going to see that their coverage overlaps with each other. Again, that's the dynamic how the system is set up. Let's say this cell site here, for whatever reason, it goes down. I don't know, squirrel eats a wire, there's a power outage or something. You still have these 2 remaining cell sites over here that are providing coverage to that same geographical area. So your customers are not going to lose anything. You're going to continue to have network access, and it's going to be very economical for whatever wireless carrier is providing coverage in that area. Now we're at 11:31 p.m., March 6, 2016. Now we're at 12:13 a.m., the morning of March 7th, 2016. And as you can see, the position of the horizontal plane has now shifted. You can see it's traveled a little further west, and that's consistent with the mobile device itself moving a little further west. Now we're at 12:22 a.m., the morning of March 7th of 2016. Now, right now we're at 12:22 a.m., the morning of March 7th of 2016. And as you can see clearly, the mobile device is now operating in an entirely geographical area. Initially, we know it started a little further now, a little further north, it traveled south. Now it's moved more south-southwest. It's utilizing a completely different cellular site and sector, which is providing coverage to an entirely different geographical area of Palm Beach County, Florida. Now we're at 12:25 a.m., the morning of March 7th of 2016. Now we're at 12:35 a.m., the morning of March 7th of 2016. (12:38 a.m.) the morning of March 7th of 2016. 12:45 a.m. the morning of March 7th of 2016. 12:46 a.m. the morning of March 7th of 2016. Again, 12:46 a.m. and 26 seconds, the morning of March 7th of 2016. 12:49 a.m. and 28 seconds, the morning of March 7th of 2016. 12:49 a.m. and 36 seconds, the morning of March 7th of 2016. Now we're at 1:03 a.m. and 40 seconds, the morning of March 7th of 2016. Now you can see this specific cellular site here is oriented more north. Now this is going to be considered, this specific cell site, because I know the area, I'm familiar with that area, and I've been doing this so long. This specific cell site here is kind of located outside of the city limits. So this is considered consistent with the mobile device traveling pretty good distance outside the city limits. And this is at 1:03 a.m. and 40 seconds, the morning of March 7th of
Detective,
2016.
before you start again, are you able to point out on this map where the Beeline Highway is?
Yes, this is the Beeline Highway, right? This line here is the Beeline Highway. This is going to be Indian Town Road. This is going to be, I think this is North Lake Boulevard, I want to say, but this is Indian Town Road, and this road here is Beeline Highway. And Beeline Highway stretches anywhere from 50 to 60 miles. It actually takes you into an entirely different county. Begins at Palm Beach County and takes you into an entirely different county, stretches about 50 to 60 miles. As you can see now, the mobile devices travel a considerable distance north-northwest. And when you're looking at geolocation analysis, and when you're doing any type of mapping and trying to understand the movement of the mobile device, it's always imperative to consider distance and time travel. This specific area over here is extremely desolate. It's extremely isolated. There's the major thoroughfare out here is Beeline Highway. There's nothing encompassing this area but swamp lands and trees and water and debris. So when I'm looking at these handouts, I'm getting an understanding of the movement of the mobile device. And I know it's not gonna move that quickly or that fluidly. It wouldn't do that in these areas here because, like I said, it's all obstruction. There's nothing out there. But this is the main thoroughfare. And what you're looking at is consistent with the mobile device moving north-northwest along Beeline Highway. And this transmission is at 1:20 a.m. and 49 seconds. As you can see, we have additional communication. There's a cell site here and a cell site there. We have an overlapping coverage, and we also have that handoff. This is 1:22 a.m. and 53 seconds and 1:23 a.m. and 20 seconds. Again, this is consistent with the mobile device traveling north-northwest along Beeline Highway, which is here. And this is the location where Rachel Bay's body was located, right here. We're at 1:24 a.m. and 15 seconds. This is where Rachel Bay's body was located. As you can see, it falls within the estimated handout coverage area of this specific cell site and sector here. And essentially what this illustrates is that at the time this specific transmission was made or facilitated, they utilized a cell site and sector that has estimated handout coverage area that encompasses this region. This is consistent with the mobile device being within this geographical area here. And this is at 1:27 a.m. the morning of March 7th, 2016. This is at 1:27 a.m. and 18 seconds. Again, this is where Rachel Bay's body was located right here, the morning of March 7th of 2016. Again, as I articulated earlier, any geolocation data that is produced, that we have records of, is incumbent upon there being some type of activity. For me analyzing and reviewing the records, I know the last transmission was at 1:27 a.m. and I believe it was 15 seconds. We didn't have any additional communication between that mobile device and the cellular network until about 2:10 a.m. the morning of March 7th, 2016. As you can see, that mobile device has returned to the original geographical area where this illustration began, which is consistent with being at or in the geographical area of the location where Mr. Hayes lived. 1272 West 30th Street in Riviera Beach, Florida. In actuality, I'll say the mobile device probably traveled anywhere from 15 to 25 miles back east, slightly southeast. This is the location where Mr. Hayes lived at the time, 1272 West 30th Street, Riviera Beach, Florida. So initially, the mobile device started here. It descended south, southeast, and southwest. It descended back north, ultimately north, northeast, up along Beeline Highway, and ultimately back to this geographical area. Now we're at 2:11 a.m. and 17 seconds, the morning of March 7th of 2016. And as you can see, the mobile devices continue to communicate with cellular sites and sectors. They have an estimated handout coverage area that encompasses the location where Mr. Hayes lived at the time. Again, this is consistent with the mobile device being at Mr. Hayes' residence or within that geographical area there. As you can see, we have that overlapping coverage right there, and that residence falls right within the sweet spot of that overlapping coverage.
Now, what we have just seen is an exhibit that was not introduced into evidence.
No, Your Honor, just as a demonstrative aid for the court.
For the record, we should have it in the part of the record somehow.
And if I can certainly move it in evidence, Your Honor. I can put it on
Maybe
a
you can
CD.
put it on a flash drive or something.
I can do that.
Okay. Not to do it right now, just
Yes, Your Honor.
to supplement the record as we go.
Any objection for the defense?
No. All right.
Mr. Evans, were you, or Detective Evans, were you in town on the day that Mr. Hayes was actually arrested for the charge of first-degree murder?
Yes, I was.
And did you author a search warrant for any DNA from Mr. Hayes?
Yes, I did.
Did you execute that search warrant on Mr. Hayes?
Yes, I believe I was executed on video, if I'm not mistaken.
And do you know whether or not Mr. Hayes was interviewed after he was arrested?
Yes, he was interviewed
Where was that interview conducted?
in the interview room in Law&Crime Division headquarters.
And did you conduct the interview?
Yes, I facilitated that interview.
Was there anybody in there with you?
William Frazier, he's an investigator with the Palm Beach County State's Attorney's Office.
And was that interview audio and video recorded?
Yes,
Did you read Mr. Hayes' Miranda rights?
yes, I did.
Did he agree to speak with you?
Yes,
There's an exhibit in front of you, a CD. It's marked for identification as states. Let's get a look at the back. I.
yes,
Do you recognize any initials on that CD?
yes, my initials are on here, yes.
Is there a date as well?
September 10th of 2021, 8:23 a.m.
And did you watch the contents of that CD this morning?
Yes, I did.
What does that CD contain, sir?
It contains the interview that I conducted with Robert Hayes.
Does it fairly and accurately depict that interview?
Yes, it does.
Has it been altered or tampered with in any way that you could see this morning?
No, it has not.
Your Honor, I move this item into evidence as the next numbered state's exhibit.
Assuming there's no objection at this time.
I haven't heard the video.
It's the Palm Beach County interview.
Palm Beach County interview. That's it from September 10th, 2021, is that correct?
That's when he watched it. I can get the date of, when was the interview conducted, Detective?
It was the date of his arrest. It was back in 2019. I don't remember this exact date.
To refresh your recollection, take a look at your report.
Yes,
The report really depicts your investigation of the crime scene, is that what I understand?
no, it depicts my involvement in the investigation, sir.
I'm sorry, I showed the wrong.
And I'd like to indicate my review of it is only for the purpose of this hearing, Your Honor, not for this case.
Absolutely.
Your Honor, this report contains statements allegedly made by Mr. Hayes, that there's no way that I could certainly agree that these statements were made as far as his admission. I guess the only thing I can suggest is that this is the report that is prepared by him that contains incriminating information for Mr. Hayes, which I certainly can't agree to be admitted as evidence.
Okay, well, like I said, this is more akin to a proffer, so if there's an objection to it, I think when he doesn't want to admit the report, I think he wants to just allow the witness to see the report to confirm the date of Mr. Hayes' arrest. I think it was used for purposes of refreshing the recollection of the witness.
For that limited purpose, Your Honor, I have no objection.
Okay.
And does that refresh your recollection, Detective?
Yes, September 15th of 2019.
And that's when you interviewed Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
The original question.
Yes,
And just to go back to the CD, that interview was audio and video recorded.
yes, it was.
All right, at this time, I would move this interview of Mr. Hayes in Palm Beach County into evidence in the next number of states exhibit.
Very well. I'm going to accept Mr. Shea's previous objection to the statement being incriminating and having a general objection to its admissibility. I'll overrule the objection at this time. You feel free to file a motion to suppress if you feel it was obtained in violation of the defendant's constitutional rights. Like I said, for purposes of this hearing, this is more of a proffer.
Yes,
So I will go ahead and admit it as evidence limited to this hearing only and not a trial rule. Okay?
yes, sir.
State's number 9, Your Honor.
At this time, I move to publish the interview of Mr. Hayes.
Yeah.
Can you say it? Can you check the multi? Your shots on this and no visuals? Can you ask me this?
Yes. Mr. Hayes? Yes, sir. James Hayes. Lewis, sir, what am I here, sir? Good. Do me a favor, just have a seat right there. And I really appreciate it. This is William Frazier. He's with the Palm Beach County State's Attorney's Office. My name is James Evans. I work for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office Homicide Division. Yes, sir. Just by your body language and by the things that you said to me thus far, I'm sure you're concerned about what's going on. You may have a lot of questions about why you're here, what's going on. Am I correct? That's right. Okay, first and foremost, I just want to let you know that we've both been doing this for an extremely long time. And we're all about honesty and being upfront. Yes, sir. By no means Are we intending to run any games on you, any deception, any trickery, any buffoonery, or anything like that? Okay, we're just gonna come out and let you know exactly what's going on and why you're here. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, before we get into anything, because you are in custody, you are detained, and your liberty, so to speak, is restricted. We have to ensure that you understand your constitutional rights. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Look at me, Ms. Hayes. Do you understand? We're about doing things the right way, and we're about being straight up. Do you understand? Okay, I need you to say yes or no.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read you your constitutional rights. And I want you to understand this. If I'm going too fast, I want you to let me know. You understand? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
If I say something that you don't understand, please let me know. You understand?
Yes, sir.
If you need me to repeat something, please let me know. Do you understand? Okay. I'm required to warn you before you make any statement that you have the following constitutional rights. You have the right to remain silent and not answer any questions. Do you understand, sir?
Yes, sir.
Any statement you make must be freely and voluntarily given. Do you understand, sir?
Yes, sir.
You have the right to the presence and representation of a lawyer of your choice before you make any statement during any question. Do you understand, sir?
Yes, sir.
If you cannot afford a lawyer, you're entitled to the presence and representation of a court-appointed lawyer before you make any statement during any question. Do you understand, sir?
Yes, sir.
If at any time during the interview you do not wish to answer any questions, you are privileged to remain silent. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
I can make no threats or promises to induce you to make a statement. This must be of your own free will. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Any statement can and will be used against you in the court of law. Do you understand, sir?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand everything that I've read to you?
Yes.
Now, I notice you're extremely emotional right now. I notice you're crying, you're very reserved.
They just pulled me out of my house, my daughter, and I don't know what's going on.
Okay. You're one of the guys who telling me you're a chef.
Yeah, I used to be here.
Well, what do you currently do for work right now?
Now I work at Cheetahs.
You work at Cheetahs?
I was assistant general manager at a restaurant. I quit there a couple months ago. I'm trying to find work. Howley's. Yes, sir.
Oh, Holly's cooking site, good restaurant.
Well, you a cook from culinary school or something like that? Where did you go to culinary school at?
In LA.
Atlanta, Georgia?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, myself, and like I said, we're straight up. And first and foremost, we have a couple of questions for you. Now, before we speak to anybody, we obviously do background investigations on it. I'm sure you're aware of that, correct?
I guess.
Were you born and raised in Palm Beach County, sir?
Yes, sir.
How long have you pretty much lived here consistently throughout your life? Or is it pretty much that you come and go other places, other cities and whatnot?
I went to college in Daytona. I lived in Charlotte and Atlanta. So I came back here.
Where'd you college did you go to? Was it, you played football or basketball?
I was in the band.
Pardon?
I was in the band.
Oh, you were in the band. What year did you go to college in Daytona?
2000 to 2006.
2006. You were living in Daytona at the time?
Yeah, stayed on campus for the majority of that time. And then the last 2 years, I stayed on campus, right around the corner from the games.
Culinary program,
No, I was
Agent?
criminal justice.
Oh, you were criminal justice agent. So did you have a scholarship to be in the band at the food company?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you graduated from high school, I'm assuming in 2000,
Yes, sir.
and you moved to Daytona to attend college at the food company?
Yes, sir.
And you lived in Daytona from 2000 to 2006?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you say at one point you lived in Atlanta.
Yes, sir.
When did you live in Atlanta, say?
December 2010 to May 2012.
Okay. And then after you lived in Atlanta, then you moved to North Carolina?
No, I lived in Charlotte first.
Charlotte, North Carolina, before you lived in Atlanta.
Yes, sir.
So you lived in Daytona from 2000 to 2006, correct?
Yes. I came back here to work. I worked at the Center for Hope.
Yes, sir.
And with DCF for a while. And then I left here in 2008.
Yes, sir. Okay. And then that's when you moved to Charlotte.
Yes, sir.
2008. After Charlotte, that's when you moved to Atlanta.
Yes, sir.
You lived in Atlanta from 2010 to 2012.
Yes.
How long have you been back in Palm Beach County?
Since then.
So you left Atlanta in 2012?
Yes, sir.
So when did you move back here?
Maybe 2012, mom came over, got.
Were you had some issues, did you was homesick or something?
No, couldn't find any stable work after got out of culinary school, and those were piled up.
When you lived in Daytona from 2000 to 2006, did you? I know you said you lived on campus. At any point during that duration, did you have your own apartment or your own place, anything like that?
Yes,
And where exactly was that there?
Jefferson Street, like 2 blocks away.
Did you have roommates? Was it?
Yeah, really.
Okay, so you lived there the last 2 years when you were up there. What about when you lived in Charlotte? Was it the same thing?
I stayed with my best friend, his girlfriend. Yeah.
Same circumstances in Atlanta? Roommate?
No, it's not problem.
Okay. And you moved back down here in 2012, did you move in with your mom?
No, I stayed with my sister.
Okay.
For a little while, and then I got an apartment right across from where I live at now.
Like you lived on Flagler Drive?
Yes,
What's your mom's name?
St. Lawrence.
What's her last name?
Yes.
And your sister?
Which one?
The one you lived with,
Terrace Collins.
Terrence Collins.
Terrace.
Terrace.
Yeah.
So you lived with your mom and your sister from 2012 until when?
I stayed with her for a couple of months, then I got my apartment. I had my own apartment, so December, this is March 13, that's my mom's house called fire.
Oh, okay. So in that March of 2013 is when we found your own place.
No, I was staying in my own place until that time, because my mom's house caught fire.
Yes, sir.
When I got the phone call, I was at work and I left. Okay, so my mom's house was on fire.
Yes, sir.
Most of my job for that.
Yes.
So, for like another 2 months, May, possibly, May, I lost that apartment. And we went home.
Okay. And you said at some point, you live at 5500 North Flagler Drive now, correct? How long have you been living there?
Since November 2016.
Since November 2016. Before you moved into 5500 North Flagler, what did you live?
With my mom, 1270 30th Street.
That's in West Palm, Riviera.
Riviera.
What's your current phone number, States?
561 810 7657.
7657.
Yes, sir.
How long have you had that phone number, sir?
Years.
When you say years,
3, 4.
3 to 4 years. Did you have that same number back in 2010, 2011, 2012? Okay. What about in 2016? You remember the number you had in 2016?
Say no.
561-810-7657.
Yes.
Who do you currently live with on Flagler Drive?
Johnson.
How long have you guys been together?
14, 15, 14.
Since 2014.
Yes.
Did you previously own a Honda Pilot,
Yes.
silver in color?
Yes.
What happened with that car?
It was resistance.
Oh, it was repossessed?
Yes.
When?
Let's see. 2016. I only had it for a couple months.
Do you remember back in 2016 what month you had that car?
I know.
You know if it was early 2016, mid 2016, or late 2016?
It's late.
Okay, mid to late. Okay, you said it was repossessed?
So,
Okay. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Hayes. This female here, okay, her name is Rachel Baines. Are you familiar with this female? Rachel Baines, have you ever seen her, met her before in your life?
I just saw posters on TikTok.
Pardon?
The posters that were on TikTok.
What happened?
I have no idea.
You never had any communication, encounter, or any type of interaction with her in your life?
Not to my knowledge. That's
When you say not to your knowledge, you know, that's a somewhat ambiguous statement. What exactly do you mean when you say not to my knowledge?
I don't know her.
You don't know it?
No, sir.
You say you've been with your current, with your fiance since 2014? So you don't know her, so I'm assuming you saying you don't know her, that means you've never had any type of romantic relationship with her at all.
No, sir, I don't know her, sir.
Have you ever had sex with her?
No,
Respectfully to you, sir, you didn't answer this question. Did you ever have sex with her?
I don't know her, so I can't tell you I had sex with her. I don't know her. I don't know who this woman is.
You've never seen her before in your life?
No,
I think, let me see, what about this? I have a couple more pictures.
no. I don't know that person.
The posters that you saw of her on Dixie Highway, did you ever stop and take a look at those posters to read them?
No,
The type of poster that you saw of her, have you ever seen that type of poster before with another image on there, say for somebody else?
yeah.
And what circumstances surrounded that poster?
They were missing or something, they were killed or something happened to them.
Correct. This female here, her name is Rachel Bay. And you're 100% certain that you've never met her or had any encounter with her before
I don't know her, sir.
at all? Well, Rachel Bay was killed on March 7th, 2016. She was killed on March 7th of 2016. Do you know what Beeline Highway is?
Yes,
Have you ever been on Beeline Highway?
not years.
When was the last time you were on Beeline Highway?
Going to basketball entire park.
I'm saying further, I mean further northwest, Beeline Highway.
Remember when Detective Evans says we weren't here to trap you or trick you or anything else like that? I promise you, we're not here to do that. Can I ask you a question? How about a hookup? You said you've been with your fiance for a few years. Do you ever stray a little bit? Maybe, look to see if you can get some variety in your
Yeah.
romantic life? It has? Okay, do you know the partners that you had
Not really, a lot of them were like Backpage.
from Backpage? So you frequented Backpage before?
I did.
Have you called up and made a date on Backpage? Okay, and any problems when you met a girl on Backpage?
No, sir.
Any kind of violence or anything, or girl says you didn't pay me enough money or anything else like that?
You said, be honest, I'll be honest. Sir.
Yes.
Normally when I was calling Backpage, I was either extremely drunk or on something, so I always went with money, so I didn't have to have that issue.
Yeah. But you were successful in accomplishing your goal. In other words, can I be frank with you? You got laid, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, and I appreciate your advice. Thank you.
The current cell phone that you have now, is that the phone that you utilize to communicate with these females? I'm assuming they're females, not males, right?
Yes, sir.
That you will hook up with and have sex with. How many partners, how many encounters would you say you've had with females that you met via Backpage or some other social media site? At least 50.
Yes, sir.
And when did this begin? Throughout your adult life, or is there a certain point where this started?
So I got back here.
In Palm Beach County? What about when you were in Daytona?
No, sir.
So so starting roughly 2012?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is this something that you started doing out of curiosity, out of loneliness? What was it that led you to that page?
I was working a lot and my chef, he was joking, told me about it. And I tried it out once. So I started.
Well, Rachel Bay, she advertised via Backpage.
Yeah.
You never met her on Backpage?
I don't remember a lot, sir. I'll be honest.
Okay. So when you say you don't remember a lot of them, what's that mean?
That means I went in, did what I did, and I left.
Okay. Would you typically use condoms with them?
Yes.
Always?
Yes, sir.
Was there ever an instance where you didn't use a condom?
No, sir.
Never? Whatsoever?
In West Palm Beach, when you used Backpage, can you recall where you would go, to have a date?
Multiple hotels.
Any particular hotel?
There were a lot of where I used to work at, Kingdom, Palm Springs.
Yeah, I know what Kensington.
I think it was Holiday Days Inn, of course, there's
Sure. Yeah.
Was there one particular place that you relished more than the other, like that was your go spot, or it just was more sporadic?
So,
What about inside your car? Never. Have you looked at this picture real quick, Mr. Hayes?
I don't know. So,
You don't know this woman? She advertised via Backpage. You know, and to be quite frank with you, sir, we have irrefutable scientific evidence that establishes that you know her. Not only did you know her, you had sex with her. Mr. Hayes.
I still sure I don't know.
All right. We'll work on that. Let me ask you another question, sir. You live at 5500 North Flagler?
Yes.
5500 block. So, and you said you worked at Cheater? The Cheater Lounge, right?
Yeah.
And you worked at Howley's?
Yes.
So how do you get back and forth to work every day?
I take the bus.
You take the bus?
Yes.
And the bus travels north on Broadway when you're going home, right?
Yes.
And then you just walk a couple of blocks east and you're home? Okay. Did you ever have occasion back in the day what was the last vehicle that you owned? Was that the Honda? And so you've been basically traveling by bus since 16?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You know there's a lot of hookers on Broadway, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows there's a lot of hookers on Broadway. Did you ever avail yourself of those services, pick up a hooker on Broadway? Always on Backpage. Is there any reason why you wouldn't just pick up a girl on Broadway? Pardon?
It sounds, but it's wrong with the joint.
You don't want nothing to do with Broadway, is what you're saying. Saying the truth, I gotta be ready. You know, the girls on Backpage are probably the high quality, right? You agree with me?
So,
All right, all right. Tell me what you know about DNA, sir.
everybody has their own.
Detective Evans is much better at DNA than I am, and I would ask my friend to give you a little tutorial on DNA.
Remember what I told you a couple of minutes ago? We have your profile. Robert Tyrone Hayes. You said you never met Rachel Ray. You said you never had an encounter with Rachel Ray. We have your DNA, semen, inside of her vagina.
That's the problem. I don't know, sir.
Tell me about your family, sir. How many brothers do you have?
There are two brothers, two sisters.
The brothers, are they biological brothers?
But the same mom.
Same mom, different dad? So no twins, right?
No.
Okay, Detective Evans, keep talking. Just listen to what he has to say.
You said you have some understanding of DNA records.
Yes.
You know how significant and powerful DNA is, don't you, sir?
Yes.
Would you agree that in what you know about DNA, we all have our own unique profile? You say you've never had an encounter with Rachel Ray, pardon?
Oh, he
All right.
You don't?
no, sir. I have anything to do with this.
Whatsoever?
No, sir.
Anything else?
I don't hurt people, man. I go to work and I come home.
Did you make the statement to us a little while ago that sometimes you might have been a little bit messed up when you had the back page fixed?
Yes.
Any chance that you had any loss of memory during those times?
No, sir.
All right. Tell me something. When you dated on that page, did you have a preference for black women or white women, or you didn't care, or what?
Or whatever caught my eye at the time.
Whatever caught your eye.
No,
So you weren't particular.
no, sir.
All right.
You said something just that captivated me. Remember you said, I didn't do nothing to anybody? You just said that, right? You did. Why did you say that?
I wasn't sure.
No, I'm asking you, what led you to say, I didn't do nothing to anybody? Because that's an unequivocal statement.
You know, wow, you bring me about this woman,
No, what I did, Mr. Hayes, I asked you about Rachel Ray. I asked you, did you know her? You emphatically said no. I asked you if you've ever had any communication or interaction with her. You emphatically said no. I asked you if you ever had any sex with her. You emphatically said no. Then a couple minutes ago, you said, I didn't do anything to anybody.
I like to see the lawyer because this bullshit. I want to talk to you more. I want to respond to you. So I told you that I want to go home to my family, bro. You talk to somebody. I want to do some more. You talk to somebody.
Well, Mr. Hayes, we understand that, sir.
I'll go ahead and stop it there, Judge. Detective Evans, from your experience, what was from an investigative standpoint, the most relevant thing from that interview with Mr. Hayes?
From my perspective, I think he said a lot of things in that interview that were extremely important. For instance, verifying that he lived in Daytona from 2000 to 2006. His repeated denials in regard to knowing Rachel Bay, in spite of the irrefutable scientific evidence that we have connecting him to her.
What about the phone number?
That mobile device number that he provided, I don't know if he was being untruthful or if he just didn't remember, because the mobile device number that he gave me, 561-810-7657, that phone wasn't activated under his name until I believe it was September 30th, 2017. So we're talking about almost a year and a half after the incident. During my extensive background investigation, I verified in 2016, he was actively using mobile device number 561-568-6912, which was registered in his name. Then a year and a half or so later, he kept AT&T wireless, but he got an entirely different phone number.
And he mentions, Mr. Hayes in that interview mentions the last time he was on Beeline Highway, or he said it hadn't been years, but he said he'd been at some park playing basketball.
Yedaya Park, I've also played basketball at that park before.
How far north is that park compared to where Rachel Bay's body was found?
Rachel Bay's body was found anywhere between 18 to 22 miles northwest of that park. So we're talking about a significant distance.
With the tower, particularly the tower that was servicing the 6912 number that was in the area of Rachel Bay's body, would that tower service all the way down at that park?
It could potentially, however, based on the way the network is set off, there's going to be a handoff just because of geographical and terrain characteristics, environmental reasons, the power level. I mean, there's a myriad of things that you have to consider when you talk about which specific cell site a mobile device is going to communicate with. Potentially, it could, but the way the network is set up is not going to be possible. Unless all the other cell sites in that area were under maintenance, were down, or were just inoperable. That's when you would see that. But other than that, it's not going to happen.
That one moment, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
And was it later on, I think it is on video, but later on you executed that search warrant for the buckle swab that we were talking about?
Yes, sir.
Now, after collecting Mr. Hayes' buckle swabs, did you have any further involvement in this investigation related to Rachel Bay? Other than, I think you
I authored some additional search warrants in as it pertains to this investigation, but that was ultimately it.
And that was the search warrant of the home, and then the additional search warrant for the time on tower data.
I did a search warrant for the homes, search warrant for his Google data, search warrant for the mobile device number that he provided during the course of that interview. And I believe I may have authored a search warrant to conduct a forensic extraction of the mobile device that he had at the time.
And Detective, you do see Mr. Hayes in the courtroom today, the man you interviewed.
Yeah, I most certainly do.
And what is he wearing, sir?
He's wearing an orange shirt. He has on a white mask.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions, Your Honor. I will tender the witness.
Thank you. Any cross-examination? Very brief.
Detective, you demonstrated a very unique program here showing the zones where this phone was operative or the phone was located. Am I correct to say, I'm asking you this question, it depicts where the phone was located, were there any transmissions supporting the location of this phone that you came in possession of?
That phone wasn't active at the time, sir. That phone didn't become activated until September 30th of 2017. The actual phone he had at the time, the number he gave during the interview was the actual number he had. The number he gave at the time of the interview was not the number that Mr. Hayes had at the time of, on March 7th of 2016. We're talking about two entirely different mobile device numbers.
Okay, so there's a different telephone. So the tracking, am I correct on this, is tracking the device only?
The mobile device and the mobile device number associated with that specific device. When I author a search warrant for geolocation data, what I'm going to do is my phone number is 561-379-2899. So if I wanted to get my phone records from AT&T via search warrant, in the application itself, I would say I'm requesting voice call data, SMS data, and data associated with service for mobile device number 561-379-2899. The records are specific to a mobile device number. Now, there's additional numbers associated with that device. This is called the MZ, which is the International Mobile Subscriber Identifier, which you get in the IMEI, which is the International Mobile Equipment Identifier. But for the purposes of getting records, it's specific to the phone number itself.
Yeah, I understand. I'm trying to figure out behind your demonstration here with all of the zones. It's really just recording that number, that's that device. In other words, it's not recording any voice control information or telephone conversations or emails or however you send from that.
Well, the illustration that I presented shows the communication between the mobile device and the cellular site. There's three forms of data that I receive. Voice call, which is traditional. I call my mom, she calls me.
Let's keep it, if we can, separate that, if you don't mind. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did you receive any voice calls that were recorded during this trip on that particular day?
You mean verbatim? You mean some type of voice message or
Well,
something
no,
like that?
whatever information you collected, did you collect any information to show that the phone was being operated by Mr. Hayes to a person?
I think we're getting hung up on semantics and
This-
it's getting confusing. I think what he's trying to ask you is, were there any transactions that the phone engaged between the time that he was tracked, and you did the math, whether he received a phone call or made a phone call, a text message or received a text message or anything along those lines?
The only geolocation data that we got, there were phone calls on his phone that day. However, that communication, we didn't receive it. I believe it was at the 11:30 or so, which is, see, what I'm explaining is with AT&T, we get geolocation data in three forms. We get voice call, SMS, or we get data associated services. When I say data associated services, I'm talking about instant messaging, multimedia messages, email activity, or internet connection. So let's say I have a phone.
Well, let me stop you there, I think. So whenever the little bubble gets triggered,
That's
that means
a,
that either an email went in, some data was transferred between that device and the cell tower.
that's
That's
gonna
what triggered the tower.
that radio sequence. There's an uplink and a downlink. The uplink is from the mobile device to the cell site. The cell site is the downlink from the uplink from the mobile device to the cell site. The downlink from the cell site to the mobile device. Yes, there's some type of communication or transmission between the two.
Okay. So
And that could be in the form of voice, SMS, or data. Data is internet activity. Data is email activity, internet connections, instant messaging, multimedia messages. You could be streaming music. You could be watching a video. That's all data.
Your Honor, and that's basically what I'm asking. Do you have any of that information that identifies that it was Mr. Hayes that had that phone in his possession?
The only information that we have that associate him to that mobile device is what was delineated on the subscriber data that I received from AT&T. That phone belonged to Mr. Hayes.
And so you, as you're testifying today, don't have any personal knowledge supported by evidence that that phone, when it was pinging, was in the possession of Mr. Hayes. In other words, the phone could have been in the possession of some third party, but it would still be pinging with the information that that third party was using.
I'm saying that mobile device is associated with Mr. Hayes. My extensive background investigation showed Mr. Hayes exclusively used that mobile device, and my background information established that that phone belonged to Mr. Hayes.
And that's just your opinion, isn't that correct?
No, that's-
You have no evidence to support that. I don't mean to be arguing with you, but that's the point that I'm making, is that this demonstration here does not show anything other than that phone is registered to Mr. Hayes, but it doesn't show that that phone was in possession of Mr. Hayes. You have no independent background information to show that other than your opinion.
No, I don't have no one saying on that date he had the phone. I'm saying my investigation established that mobile device is associated with Mr. Hayes.
Understand? Did you also receive something from Google showing that the phone was at Mr. Hayes' residence?
Yes, that data essentially paralleled the information I received from AT&T up until a certain point.
Now, does Mr. Hayes live at that residence by himself, or did he live there with someone else?
I believe he lived with his mother at 1272 West 30th Street in Riviera Beach, Florida.
And do we know whether anyone else was in that residence other than Mr. Hayes and his mother on the date of this incident?
No, we don't.
On one of the search warrants after he was arrested and you went to his home, were you present when that was being executed?
I was present briefly, then I left.
During the arrest, I was given some type of a diary, apparently, that was written in here. Did you collect that diary?
No, I believe one of the crime scene investigators collected that, but that specific notebook and those transcripts, I know it was recovered from Mr. Hayes' residence. And everything, chain of custody was maintained. Everything is categorized in regards to who collected what and where it was inside the residence. I didn't collect anything from the residence. I essentially authored the search warrant. I was there when the warrant was initiated, and then I went back to the station to facilitate the interview with Mr. Hayes.
Right. Now, when you went back to the station, the officers who executed the warrant, did they deliver that to you, the diary that he had written?
No, a crime scene collects everything.
And do you know who that was?
No, I'm sure you have the crime scene reports. We have several different crime scene investigators for day and night, and they're very thorough and very meticulous. And I'm sure everything was archived and documented by them.
Yes. And I guess in summary, then, my basic question to you is, you are not here today with any personal knowledge or evidence that that phone was in the possession of Mr. Hayes during all of the time, during the description that you're showing of all the little rings in the trap.
My investigation established the only person who exclusively uses that mobile device is Mr. Hayes.
But you didn't answer my question.
No, that's what I'm asking according to my investigation, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, thank you very much. You're free to go.
You're welcome,
Have a
Your Honor.
safe trip back. All right, you want to take a little another break? Are you ready for a witness, or
See if she's on Zoom yet, Judge.
you have a witness on the screen? What's the name of the witness you're looking for?
What is that? Stacy Brown. See you right there.
Bottom center.
Yeah, Ms. Brenner, do you mind unmuting yourself, please?
Hello.
Hello, do you have a camera, Ms. Brenner? Yes. Okay, and then you're ready to go?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah,
Could I request a brief bathroom break?
okay, let's take a 5-minute recess, okay? Ms. Brenner, we'll be back in 5 minutes, okay?